Sonic Forces. Success. Chapter 6. Waking Up.
There was a throbbing pain somewhere in my consciousness. The first thing that I felt, and that I felt in a long while. Then the fact that I didn't feel like I was floating came next. In fact, I felt like I was laying on something not only solid but soft and comfortable. Oh, so very comfortable. I wanted to stay there, to ignore every feeling of something not being right, and pass back into the darkness. That's when I realized something was in fact wrong. The rest came back quickly, but my fuzzy mind didn't let it hit hard enough. All I knew was how strangely weak I felt where the throbbing was coming from, which was practically everywhere.
Tiny pricks in my arms whenever I gave a slight movement, the heavy and warm thing over my chest and down past my feet, and most importantly, how hungry I was. With these feelings came the memories, which I could have done without. The memories gave me nothing but guilt, sadness, and a loneliness so deep it was like the infinite space I could have sworn I died in. Which led me to a question: how was I alive? It didn't seem possible that I survived. I almost believed that I was actually in heaven or whatever place you pass into. But the beat of my heart and how real everything felt proved me wrong. I made myself force my eyes open to me a white ceiling and squinted at it to clear my blurry vision. A steady melody of a machine tracking my pulse reached my ears. I looked over at it slowly, so as to not trigger a wave of nausea that apparently was settled in my stomach and threatened to spill out of my throat. A green line showed, spiking with the beat of my heart. Yep, definitely still alive. Next step, check where the heck I even was. I turned my head to the window. That's where I became confused. There were large buildings, trees, and bushes like Mobius. But the one thing that made it all different were the cars. Is that what they were called? That were all whizzing by and clumped together at least 5 or so stories below. The only place that had something as strange as that was Earth. It could only mean one thing in that case. I was on Earth. Just as I made this conclusion, a voice interrupted.
Sonic?
I turned my attention to the door to see a human man standing there. Something about him seemed familiar in a weird way. Everything from his messing-like brown hair to his concerned blue eyes. There were deep lines under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in over a month. Who are you? I rasped. I hated how my voice sounded. Where am I? I hated that I had already came to that conclusion and still asked the question anyway.
You're on Earth.
For some reason, his voice went watery and broke.
And oh gosh.
The next second, he wrapped me in a tight hug, which made me grunt in pain and surprise. That didn't stop him, though. In fact, he seemed to hold on slightly tighter. Whoa there. Little personal space? I croaked, grimacing. He pulled back, a full grin of relief and joy on his face.
Sonic, it's me, Christopher Thorndyke.
I stared at him for a moment, stared at him hard, and it finally snapped into my head. I gave a gasp so big it hurt. I winced and looked down to see a bandage around my middle. There were also places where bandages were wrapped tightly, and I was only just now noticing. I looked almost like a mummy.
Ouch, jeez, what happened to me? I wasn't this banged up
When you what?
It was like my entire self darkened in less than a second, and my heart pounded in my chest painfully.
Chris, I need to get out of here now.
I immediately sat up, ignoring my spinning head as Chris blinked.
What? Sonic, what do you mean?
There's no time to explain. I gotta get back to Mobius as soon as possible.
Before I even got in a half of a step, my body crumbled, as if it was completely empty of any bones and energy. Thankfully, Chris was right there, and caught me by the stomach before my head hit the ground. I found myself gasping for air.
What? I didn't even put any effort into that.
Sonic, calm down. You're not strong enough to even think about walking. What's going on? What happened?
Chris cried bravely as he lifted me up. He placed me back on the bed gently, and I didn't meet his gaze.
You tell me first. How on Mobius did I end up on Earth? And how long has it been? Chris only shrugged.
The only thing we know is that you crash landed here. You looked worse than this. Despite you recovering quicker than us humans, you were out for a little over 4 weeks. We thought you were going to die with how awful it was.
4 weeks, I echoed quietly to myself. Almost a whole month. Well, funny story actually. I finally looked up at him. I thought I was dead myself. I was supposed to be, anyway. Chris went rigid at that, then he seemed to shake himself out of it.
What? Sonic, that's not funny. Don't make jokes like that.
It's not a joke. He looked at me again. I locked his gaze with mine, making sure I looked as dead serious as I could possibly be. Pun intended. I could only hold it for a few seconds before looking down with shame, guilt, and sadness finally catching up to me since I woke up. I kept my gaze at the tips of my shoes as I spoke, my voice giving a small crack and sounding a lot like how I felt. Small and weak. I failed to save Mobius. The entire room seemed to buzz in silence. Chris stared at me like I had slapped him across the face, which, in a sense, I sort of did. His gaze slowly left my face, staring down at the floor below him in utter shock and disbelief.
I don't understand. That doesn't seem possible. It can't be true.
You know, it's funny. I thought the same thing. Then I pretended to glare at my bruised legs when I felt my eyes sting slightly, but I suppose I really let things get out of hand. I never thought I'd see the day where I was so pushing it, laughed at Eggman like always, expecting it to be like always. But he's always just kept getting more dangerous by the minute. And I didn't see it. I'm so stupid. My head began pounding slightly as I let it fall into my hands, hating the realization that I had failed. For the first time in my life, I have failed. And in something that would affect the ones I held close. Something I swore I would protect till the end of time. Because I made it my job. Made it my responsibility. It was the worst feeling to fail the world.
I know this isn't the best time to ask, but I just want to know. How did it happen?
I looked up at him solemnly. I could see the fear in his eyes, the concern, and the worry, and remembered. He was close to them too, and to me, he had every right to know. I straightened up again with a sigh. Not happily, I can guarantee that. He caught us all by surprise. I made my face scrunch in confusement. I didn't notice it before, but now that I think back to it, Eggman was different, darker. We should have expected something, been suspicious, because he was inactive for months. Then, the war happened. He listened as I recounted everything that occurred before I was captured. How we were all forced into a corner, struggling to defend ourselves against a sudden army of egg pawns and newer robots we've never seen before. I've retold how surprisingly powerful those robots were, and how Tails had said he's never seen the likes of those models anywhere, and how, for the first time, when I came to Eggman, he had a hint of fear in his eyes, as if he knew things were only going to get worse. And that it did. I continued after a short pause to ease my spinning head, ignoring Chris's suggestion to lay down. I needed to get it all off my chest, before I decided that bottling it up was a better option. I made her to where Tails was pretty easily, but Green Hill Zone was destroyed. I figured I would dwell on it later, and tried to finish Eggman off. But what made it all that much worse was when Shadow came out of nowhere and protected him.
Shadow?
I nodded. Not only him, but Chaos too, along with a few others. I gave him short descriptions of Zavok and Metal Sonic, and continued yet again, unconsciously wrapping my arms around my legs slightly. Then there was this one evil thing, and I'm not sure how, but he was faster than me, so much faster than me. I pulled myself in tighter, and once I started the fight, I regretted it instantly. They were beating me to a pulp as soon as it started. One flash of pain almost every second. I've never felt so cornered. I've never felt so much pain. They even managed to get me to pass out right in front of them all. When I woke up, I was Eggman's prisoner, locked in a cell, with my feet and arms cuffed together. I looked back up at Chris's face darkly. You don't even want to know what happened in those 6 months I was in his custody. Chris stared at me with so much horror. It looks like he was going to explode. I dropped the dark look, laying back as if I was my casual self, raising my arms behind my head and giving a shrug as I closed my eyes. But of course, I continued to be hopeful. I was certain that my friends were coming to rescue me, certain that they hadn't given up on me. Eggman had to be fighting somebody, I kept telling myself. So I fought back, even if things were as dark as they could have ever been. And once I was out, I would give him the biggest wake-up call of his life. I squeezed my eyes tighter, the prickling in my eyes growing as my voice cracked. I was so reliant on those hopes, believed so badly that my friends wouldn't give up. But for once, that seemed to be my biggest mistake. I dropped my arms and opened my eyes a little to stare at the ground, because that's where I ended up being sent out into space. I thought drowning was the worst way to die. I curled up again, tighter, and bringing my arms tightly close to my chest. The floor blurred. Space felt like that. It was cold. It was lonely. I was lonely. I couldn't hear anything, not even my own voice. I was so hungry, weak, and weightless. I thought I wouldn't ever be afraid of death. But now, I realize a quick death isn't as scary as a lonely and slow death. I was so ready for it, Chris. So ready. And my friends? I don't know what my friends are. Or if Mobius is. It's so far away. I shook my head at myself. I wanted to die when my friends still need me. But how am I ever going to get back to them when I'm on Earth? And if I do get to Mobius, what are they going to think of me? What will I find? For the first time, I realized I'm scared of more than just water. I looked up at Chris one last time, showing my panic in my eyes. I'm scared of my own world dying.